Hello everyone, this is Pastor Lon Al, the homesteading pastor on Harmony Acres Homestead here in Hartsville, South Carolina. I want to welcome all of you to our Come Sit a Spell. We talked about this last week and just wanted to have a time once a week to maybe just talk about different topics and different things in my life and your life and just what's going on in the world today. And just so much stuff that I think we could talk about because there's so much unrest in the world today and in our nation. I think we need to travel down memory lane. I like to reminisce about the older days. I'm a simple guy. I told you before, I'm old school, and I'm proud of that. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. So we may not be able to physically go back in time the way things used to be, but we can sure talk about them, and I think that gives people a lot of comfort to know, just to talk about the things that, because everything you hear today is doom and gloom and negativity, seems like, in most places. I mean, God's still on his throne. We still preach the gospel. We got joy unspeakable, full of glory abounding in our hearts as Christians. But in the world today, it just seems like it's not a lot of negativity. So I wanted to do this once a week to get us all together and just talk about things that are going on in your life, my life, maybe our upbringing, and the way it used to be, and also talk about the way things are now, and talk about prepping for the future. I believe we need to be spiritually ready most of all, but also you need to be preparing for anything that could go on in this country to be able to take care of you and your family. We'll be talking about some of those things later on, but today I mainly want to talk about, when I was a kid growing up. Like I said, I lived in a different time, but it was a great time that I was raised up in. I was born in January the 2nd, 1967. I was almost a New Year's baby, but I was born January 2nd, 1967, in a little town. I was actually born in Darlington. You hear me talk about Hartsville, South Carolina. Well, that's in Darlington County, and we live probably about 6-7 miles, 8 miles max from the center of Darlington Courthouse, west of Darlington. But I was raised in a little town called Dovesville, South Carolina. And it's probably from Darlington, it's about 8 miles. From where I'm at now, it's probably 9 to 10 miles, or as the crow flies, maybe a little less than that. But I was raised in the country, and I was just so grateful and thankful of that upbringing that I had. We'll give you just a brief history, just kind of lay a foundation. And I got this book that my mom gave me a long time ago, Darlington County, A Pictorial History. And I just wanted to share that with us. It's got all the different towns that are little small country towns in Darlington County. It tells a lot of the history about them. And one thing I wanted just to tell you where Dovesville got its name from. It says John Dove of Richmond County, North Carolina, settled in Darlington County in 1792 on a tract of land he purchased on Horse Branch, a tributary of Black Creek. He and his descendants continued to acquire surrounding land, and by the early 1850s, his grandson, Daniel Dove, was a substantial landowner in the area. And that's how Dovesville got its name, by the people that lived here long ago. And they became, most of the people that lived in Dovesville, their last name was Dove, so they started calling it Dovesville. Let you know where I am and how that got its name. But like I said, it's a small little town. Only one caution light. They used to pick at us when we were little in school about you better get home before they roll up the streets in Dovesville. We had one caution light out on US Highway 52, and no street lights, no sidewalks, anything like that. But it was just a small, quiet town, and I loved it. It's a little different today, and we'll get into that later on, than it was when I was growing up. But I wanted to talk a little bit today about my upbringing, somewhat. You can't get it all in on one video, and I don't want to, because I want to make many videos about this kind of stuff. But like I said, we had one caution light, and it was a little town called Dovesville, and we played outside all the time when I was coming up. I don't care if it was spring, summer, fall, or winter. You called all of us kids in the yard, and if you wanted to know where all the kids were at, you could ride by in the neighborhood, and wherever all the bicycles was laying down beside the road or in somebody's front yard, that's where we were. And we all played together. It was so much. I think it was so much more healthier for the kids growing up back in the day. I tell my kids all the time, man, you don't know what you're missing out on. It's not their fault, but we didn't have cell phones and computers and things to keep us occupied. We entertained ourselves. We got out in the community and we played ball and we done the things that we done, brings me to my next point. I wanted to talk a little bit about that stuff. My wife's aunt, Carolyn Durant, used to be her name. She's still living today. Her name's Carolyn Odom. Her husband passed away years back. She remarried, but that was, other than my granny and granddaddy's house, that was the hangout most of the time. It's her Aunt Carolyn's. She had a mobile home, and we had a bicycle track around her home, and she'd always let us race and do what we wanted to do until her husband would get home. Before he'd get home from work, we'd have to quit because he didn't want you playing around the cars or anything because we scared we'd scratch him up. And he probably had a real reason for feeling that way. But she really done a lot for us in our childhood and was a big impact in my life, and as well as my own family. But my wife's aunt Carolyn, she really played a big part in helping us kids to have a normal childhood when we were growing up. She fed us, took care of us, and didn't mind us over there playing in her yard, and we played there a lot. But like I said, we rode bicycles. We used to take and get a little piece of cardboard with a clothes peg, and we would clip it on that on the bars on the bicycle that go on each side of the front wheel or the back wheel, and we would take a clothes peg and clip it to that bar, and allow the cardboard to barely touch the spokes, where it would sound like it had a motor on it, where it sounded like a dirt bike or a motorcycle or whatever. And that's what we done. We had them fixed up. We were big time in there. We were into our bicycles today like kids are, or back in the day like kids today are into their cell phones and stuff. That was our life. Some other things that we done, like I said, we played outside. We always played this at night. We had a game that somebody would hide and be the boogeyman, and the rest of us would walk around and say, "Ain't no boogers out tonight. Grandpa killed them all last night." We'd say that over and over and over. And just running around the house, skipping around, and all of a sudden the boogeyman would come out, and we had a home base. You had to get back to that home base. If not, then the boogeyman would get you, and what would basically happen, you would have to become the boogeyman then and do it all over again. But it was just a good fun thing that we used to do, and I wish kids done more stuff like that today. Also, we used to chase and catch. We call lightning bugs. Most people today call them fireflies, but we call them lightning bugs, and they would be on the edge of my granddaddy's field where he planted the garden, the edge of the woods, and we'd run around out there and catch them. And when we got a good many of them, we'd take a mason jar, pop holes in the lid of the mason jar, put the lightning bugs in the jar and close it up and put it in our bedroom at night, and it would help, it'd help light up the room. Made you feel good about the things you're doing, even though we trapped those poor lightning bugs, but there was plenty of them out there, and it was like an accomplishment that we happened to catch something that would light up our own bedroom. We also used to play a game called Red Rover. Red Rover, send whoever right over. We'd all hold hands. I'd have a line on one side of the yard, another line on the other side. We'd hold hands. We'd say Red Rover, send, say my brother Timmy right over, and he would come and try to break through our arms. Break our arms loose from one another. How we didn't break one another's neck or break an arm, I don't know, but that never happened, at least not during that game. And that was just a fun time. There's another game that we played called Drop the Handkerchief. All the kids would get in a big circle, and one would be on the outside of the circle. He had a handkerchief or a rag or a Kleenex or whatever we had to use, and you would walk around the outside of that circle with everybody else facing inside the circle, and you would drop that rag behind that person, and when they could tell it dropped behind them, they'd reach, grab it, and they would try to chase the person that dropped it. If they caught them, that person had to go in the center of the circle. If not, you had to catch them before they got back to the spot you left open. If you didn't, then you had to be that person to drop the handkerchief, and it just kept going over and over and over like that. That was just another game that we entertained ourselves with because we played out in the yard all the time. Jump rope. I never done a lot of jump rope or hopscotch. I know a lot of the girls done that. Not that it was a girly thing, but most of the girls done that, and some of the guys. But that's just something I didn't really get into. But I would usually help turn the rope, but I didn't do a lot of the jumping. Just for whatever reason, probably wasn't coordinated enough to do it. But something else that was big in our time was we played country boy football. What I mean by country boy football is one out of bounds may be a brick wall on one side of the field, the other one may be a chain link fence. There wasn't no out of bounds for us. I mean, you guys been plowed into that fence, plowed into that brick wall many a time, but that's just the way it was. And my granddad had a hickory tree out there, and those hickory nuts would fall to the ground, and we played on those hickory nuts. I mean, if I was to try something like that now, I probably would have moved for 3 months. But that's just we were just growing up. We grew up tough and lived in the country, and that was all we knew. That was our life. Played basketball some, played kickball a lot. Just roll the ball, kick it, just like you do baseball, except you kick the ball. Most of you know about that. We played dodgeball, and everybody get in the middle and have somebody on each end. They would throw the ball trying to hit one another, and they hit you. You had to get out of the circle and try to. It was pretty easy when you had a group of people in there to hit somebody with the ball. But once it got down to one person, if that person was good and coordinated, it was hard to hit that person. But anyway, that was just a fun thing that we played. We also played something called cup ball. You take a bunch of cups or whatever and ball them up and wrap them up with duct tape, electrical tape, and you would play just like you do baseball, except you use your hand, or sometimes we'd use a little small piece of wood, but most of the time you hit the ball with your hand. You'd have the people in the positions just like you do with baseball, a pitcher, and sometimes you have a catcher, but most of the time you just throw it back if you didn't hit it. But you had somebody on the base. The difference in cup ball and baseball is just like kickball. When they hit the ball, you could throw the ball, because it was just paper, it wouldn't really hurt you. You could throw the cup ball, and if you hit them, they were out. And then we played that a lot. Also, we played something called Rack the Man. That's another term, country boy term of kind of like football. But we'd be a football, but we'd all get in a group, and we'd throw the ball up in there, and whoever caught that ball, and believe it or not, we wanted to catch the ball, and all those people knowing that they were going to rack the man, or the person that had the ball. We'd throw it up in there, and that person would just run all over the place, and we'd all try to catch him, or they'd try to catch me, whoever had the ball, and tackle them, and a gang tackle them most of the time, and then you'd do it all over again. And most time back in those days, you hardly ever got mad. You knew what to expect. We were tough, and it didn't really bother you today. Now, if you look at somebody wrong, or kids, the least little thing will make them cry. And I'm not bashing our generation today. I'm just saying they weren't raised as tough as we were, and didn't do the things outside that we done. I hate it for them. And you couldn't make them believe that today for nothing in the world with the lifestyle they live. They think I'm crazy. If anybody that's that young was listening and said, man, you crazy, I wouldn't want to do any of that. But when I was growing up, that was the thing. I enjoyed being outside all the time. We also used to foot race one another a lot, whether it was a straight run from dead get to the finish line, or whether we run like track around. We had a go-kart track over at Miss Carolyn's house. We'd race go-karts, mini bikes, and flipping a mini go-kart out there on that. And one thing I wanted to go back to playing football in her backyard, which her backyard butted up to my grandparents. Matter of fact, my mama's parents, most people can't say this, my mama's parents and my daddy's parents lived in the same town and lived on the same street. I didn't have to travel far. The Gainies on one end and the Owls on the other. I didn't have to travel far. My grandparents, but Miss Carolyn, Robbie's aunt, her property butted up to my granddaddy Owls and part of my granddaddy Gainies, and we played football out there all the time. And my granddaddy Owl had a chain link fence around his property. It was about 6 foot high. And we was playing football one day, and a little story about the football game we were playing. They threw the ball real deep in what we called the end zone up against that chain link fence. And my brother jumped up real high. He's a lot taller than I am. He jumped up real high. When he did, he came down on those barbs on the top of that chain link fence, and it stuck right in his breastbone. Now, it didn't hit him in a place where it would go inside and hurt his organs or anything, but he was balancing on that and couldn't really get himself off of it, and he was scared to death too. He probably didn't know what kind of damage he had at the beginning. So being the big brother that I was, I ran there and grabbed him by the knees and picked him up off of it and set him down. We all got together, checked him out. It was just 2 little spots over here and 2 over here. Hardly broke the skin, and we just went back to playing football. And that's the way it was. Lots of kids today may have went to the emergency room for that, but not us. We didn't want to take time from our time of playing outside because we love playing outside so much. We also built tree houses, big and small. We built tree houses a lot, and that was just a thing too back in the day. We loved to build tree houses. We loved to build army huts. We had dirt clog fights. My granddaddy would tiller or disc his garden, or either the local farmer right there close by would disc his field to get ready to plant in the springtime. And that made some of the best dirt clogs, especially if it been wet a little bit. It would really make good dirt clogs. And the harder they were, unfortunately, we really wasn't trying to kill one another, but we would just throw them at one another, how we didn't knock one of those eyeballs out. But we'd hide behind pieces of wood. You'd have this fort and that fort and another fort, and you had old tires or old boards or tree limbs or just whatever we could find to hide behind, and you throw it. And I remember throwing those dirt clods, and it would hit. It's almost like when you shoot a gun or something, you see the dust come off of it, and the main part of that dirt clod would stick to that tree or stick to that branch or stick to that tire that you hit it with. And like I said, nobody ever lost their eyesight because of that, but it's only because of the mercy and the grace of God that we didn't. But it was fun. It really had a good time. We also used to do something called chicken fight. That's when one person would be on the ground, another person would get on that person's back. And I'm probably talking to people here that you say, yeah, we know what chicken fight's all about, and some of them may not. But we would jump on somebody, like if I was on the ground, my brother would get on my back or my cousin, and then somebody else would be on the ground, and somebody get on their back, lock their legs in, you'd hold them, and they try to drag one another off the other person's back. And sometimes the person on the back would just snatch them off, or you tell them to get a hold, and you would run off. Get a hold, that's how we talk in the country. Get a hold to him means get a good, grab him real good, and we would run, try to pull him off the other person's back. But that's some of the games that we played. We played a lot more stuff as well, but I just wanted to share a little bit of that with you. I wasn't ever into drugs and alcohol growing up as a kid. Not that I wasn't a saint by no means. I was a sinner on my way to hell. And when I came to the age of accountability, I didn't drink and do drugs and smoke and all that stuff. And I wasn't a big cusser. I didn't hardly ever cuss. My granny always used to tell my mama's mom, my granny, Ollie Mae Gainey, she used to get on me all the time about, she used to tell us she's going to wash our mouth out with soap. And I knew better than to say bad words. And I'm glad she helped raise me like that, her and my mama, Miss Carolyn, and different ones. But, my granny used to tell me all the time about drugs and alcohol, and I'm glad she was in my life. And that's what's missing in a lot of kids' lives today, is good old grandparents that would break the switch out on you when you needed it, but also would sit down and talk with you about good, wholesome, good, godly living. She was a godly woman. And I remember her telling me long ago, she said, Lon, there's too many things in this world that'll take you out of this world in your right mind. You don't need to do anything to alter your thinking or to get you out of your right mind. So leave that mess alone. It's not good for you. It won't cause you anything but problems and trouble. She didn't have much of an education, but had plenty of common sense. She was a godly woman, and she really, really inspired me. I wish she was around today to see my kids and see how God's blessed me and my family. She probably never realized we'd be where we are today. But I was thankful for my upbringing with my granny and my nana and my daddy's mom as well. They all really, really helped me a lot in my childhood. But my granddaddy Al, he ran a convenience store in Dulesville, South Carolina, right there on 52 for 35, 40 years. He worked for Seaboard Coastline on the railroad for many, many years. My granddaddy Lawrence Gainey, my mama's dad, he worked at a local sawmill as long as I can remember. He didn't have a third grade education because his dad died when he was very young, and then his brother Abraham got killed on the back of a flatbed truck or trailer. They were going down the road and they met another tractor or a big bean truck or something. Anyway, my granddaddy's older brother Abraham seen it coming, so he reached by 2 or 3 other guys, knocked them and my granddaddy back off the trailer, back onto the trailer. And when he sacrificed to knock those guys back, whatever was coming down the road sideswiped the trailer and drug him and a couple more guys off and killed them that day. So what I'm saying is, if it hadn't been for the sacrifice of my granddaddy's brother, oldest brother, I wouldn't be here today, because my mama wouldn't have been here, and my granddaddy wouldn't have been here. But that's another video as well. But it's amazing how things happen like they do in life, and the end result is what we see today. But I'll get into more videos about my granddaddy's store, convenience store, the stuff he sold there. But the only downfall I said earlier, The only downfall I had was I like to drive too fast. I have vertigo, and I have to drive pretty much everywhere we go. My granddaddy had vertigo, my mama had vertigo, and they passed it along to me, and my son Corey's got a little touch of it as well. I can't lay down on the vehicle and change the oil when I have my head propped up. I get dizzy. I can't go deep sea fishing. I about get seasick in a pond, but I just have vertigo, so I drive about everywhere I go, and I always have since I got my license. But I used to drive, and my downfall was speed. I love to go fast, and I had my brother there to cheer me on and encourage me, and was now my brother-in-law Barney Odom Jr. We grew up together. One of my best friends, and his brothers were growing up in Dulesville, and he's my brother-in-law now. He married Robbie Lynn's sister Dawn. But anyway, they would cheer me on, and me and my brother Timmy went down on Black Creek. He was talking about Black Creek and Horse Branch. We know all about those places right around here. We deer hunted there, fished all the time. But we went down on the creek one time. A little story about that. My daddy had a 1970 Chevrolet Impala. I think it had like 4-barrel carburetor, 350. I don't know a lot about the engine stuff they had in it, but I know it would run really fast. It had a dash about this wide, a speedometer about this wide, and from 0 to 120, and it would run 120. Trust me, I know, because I drove it that fast. Shouldn't have, but I did. Tim and I went down the creek, and back when we were growing up, some of the stuff that we watched was like Dukes of Hazzard, where Bo and Luke Duke was always being chased by the law, by Enos and Roscoe, Boss Hogg, and I used to love to watch that movie, or that show, as well as Incredible Hulk. I don't know how many of you remember that movie. We used to watch that as well. And that's some of the times that I grew up in. But we would get down there in that Impala on the creek, and those old roads, most of them was like dead sand, full of nothing but blackjack oaks down there. And we'd be cutting donuts, and yeah, my daddy's car, my mama's car, cutting donuts and just shooting rooster tails out behind that car, that 350. It would just get the job done. It would really put on the dog, as we say here in the country. And what happened? We came around the curve, and they had those Fender Skirts on the car. Those of you know anything about those older cars, Fender Skirts, where you can only see half or 3/4 of the tire. You kind of dressed it up a little bit, which I didn't really like them on there, but a lot of people did. We come around the curve, and I sideswiped one of those blackjack oaks, and it did not scratch the side of the car at all, but it took the Fender Skirt on the passenger side and bent it around straight out, and shaped it like an L or a boomerang. So I stopped and got out, and they like, my brother, well, what we gonna do? I said, I'll tell you what we'll do. I said, we'll take this one off, and we'll take the other one off too. Maybe if they both match, if he sees one's got the skirt and one don't, it's gonna be very noticeable to start right off the bat. So I said, let's just take both of them off, put it in the trunk. The trunk back in those days, you'd have to take the key out the ignition, pop the trunk, and the trunk was about big as most cars are. Some of the small cars are today, and that we put that in the back of the trunk, the good one and the bad one. Think nothing else about it. A couple of days or maybe a week went by, and it was time for Mom and Dad to go to town and get groceries. They went to the grocery store, and when they popped that trunk, he said they put the groceries in the trunk of the car. What was laying in there? The boomerang Fender Skirt and the straight Fender Skirt. And they got back home. That didn't go over too well with us, but that's just a little story about driving on the creek like Bo and Luke Duke back in the day. Something else we used to do in that Impala was, Carolyn, I was talking about, she used to take us to school. She was kind of like the community bus. That was back in the day when you didn't have to wear seat belts. I don't know how in the world she got that many people in her car, but we packed them in there like sardines. If we'd have gotten a wreck, nobody would have got hurt anyway, because there's so many of us in there. And of course, nobody had seat belts on back then. I wasn't even thought of. So she used to take us to school, and sometimes we'd ride the school bus as well. We've done that through different years of our life, riding the school bus, Miss Carolyn taking us to school, taking the whole community to school. And then when I got my permit and driver's license, I started driving, which probably wasn't a good thing, because I love speed, remember? And we would get coming home, there's a place there on Highway 52. There's Nucor Steel. It's probably about 3 or 4 or 5 miles from my mom, probably about 3 or 4 miles from mom and daddy's house. And when we topped that hill at Nucor coming home, it was a long stretch, like a mile, how long it was. You could see forever, see if anything was coming. And I would top the hill at New Corps, and if there were several cars in line, man, I'd jump out in the line and in the oncoming traffic side and pass every car I could pass. And that old Impala did have a CB antenna mounted on the trunk of it, on the back of it. And I remember that thing leaning back. And I had my brother and my brother-in-law now, Barney, they'd be looking out the back window, seeing if that antenna would touch the trunk. And they'd be cheering me on, trying to get a little bit faster, Lon. It's almost there. And we did not have any idea how much danger we were in. That was just foolish kids doing what foolish kids done back in the day. But I'm telling you, it would run 120 plus. And because I've seen the tip of that speedometer over there locked in the box, we call it, and that long, big old wide dash. And that Impala was real heavy. That was when they made cars, really made cars out of real stuff. But it'd be floating going across Black Creek Bridge, and only because of God's mercy and grace, we're here today. Tim and my brother texted me early, and I told him I was gonna have this come sit a spell time. He said, "Tell him about that story about the car, how you used to pass everybody." And he said God definitely had a plan for us, because had not, we'd have been taken out a long time ago. But if I had to do anything different in my childhood, it'd probably that would be I would try to not drive as fast and do foolish stuff like that. But when you're young, nobody can tell you anything. You know everything. I know that because my kids are like that today, and your kids and grandkids. We just, you thought you had everything under control, but only God did, because he watched out for us on those crazy adventures we would go on. Something else we do, and I want to wrap this up. I'm getting close to 30 minutes. I'm going to save something for the next time. But we used to, crop tobacco in the tobacco fields here in Darling County, me and Barney and Tim and all of my other cousins. And we cropped back in the back field, and at lunchtime, worst things were the sand lugs. What that is, the first cropping. We'd sucker tobacco and crop tobacco and top tobacco and all that stuff. And those sand lugs was the first cropping. They'd be on the ground most of the time. It was heavy dew in the mornings, the summertime. You'd be out there cropping that tobacco, and it would have sand all over the leaves, and it'd be wet with dew. And then that sap that come out of the tobacco stalk, you would just crop it, stick it on the arm, crop it, stick it on the arm, and you get a load, you go dump it in the trailer. Well, that junk would get all over your hands. Anybody ever crop tobacco knows what I'm talking about. It'd be like tar. And we'd be all dirty and nasty and filthy. And at lunchtime, we'd go grab us a sandwich, and we'd go down to Black Creek I was talking about earlier. We'd ride our bicycles a good little ways back there. I don't know how far it was, but we'd go by ourselves as young kids. My parents let me do things when I was a kid I would never probably let mine do, as far as going out, venturing out by themselves, which back in that day, it wasn't as bad. People seemed like it wasn't as mean as they are today and perverted as they are today. And you could do stuff like that. But we'd go down there, and we had a rope swing and a diving board with a big old cement boulder, a rock on it, and we'd dive in the creek, swim across to the other side. We had soap over there on the other side, left on the bank all the time. We'd go over there and wash, lather up, and dive back in, swim for a little while and cool off, and go back to the back of the field. Or we used to pull weeds back before they used to spray them with all this pesticide and stuff that they kill them with now, Roundup and stuff, that's killing all of us. But we would pull the weeds, and we'd go back to pulling those weeds or cropping that back or whatever we do to help on the farm. And man, that was just some rewarding time, especially on Fridays. The local farmer would come around with that little envelope, that little $75, $120. Man, I thought I was rich. But it it gave us a sense of having to work for a living and earn our living by the sweat of our faces, where it says. And it taught us a lot, the work ethic back in the day, whether it was doing chores, taking care of those hunting dogs, taking care of cutting the grass, just whatever. We worked when we were coming up as kids and had to. I may mention earlier, I don't know if I mentioned or not, but before I was talking about football and all, we used to have a big thing when I was growing up was yo-yos. And in a certain time, it was a new fad that came out, and we got a yo-yo for Christmas. And back in the day when Christmas came around, that was the highlight, man. We appreciated Christmas. Even though we knew it was all about Jesus Christ, we was taught that at an early age. That's why we celebrate Christmas, because of the birth of Christ. But we used to look forward to giving gifts, and that was Christmas. You didn't get Christmas all year like they do now. You only got Christmas at Christmas time. And you were very thankful and grateful for it. That's why a lot of people today are not grateful, grown-ups and children, because they so spoiled they get stuff all year long. And we used to look forward to that. Something else we used to look forward to. Now the way you got so many channels on the TV, you can watch cartoons all the time. When we were growing up, the only time I watched cartoons on Saturday morning. That was the highlight of our Saturday morning. We got to watch good, wholesome Bugs Bunny, Yosemite Sam, you know, God, I can't think of it, from Road Runner, all those things now that they're banning off of TV because they're inappropriate. I don't understand where they're coming from with all that, but nevertheless, that's the kind of stuff we do, and we watched stuff like that when I was growing up. Man, it was just a great childhood, and had another thought in my mind I wanted to share that went along with that. Oh, about the yo-yo. I was out there, we went hunting. We were big-time deer hunters. I mean, from September 15th, January the 1st, we were in the woods. We loved to fish, too, but hunting was our thing, deer hunting especially. We done a little rabbit hunting, done a little coon hunting, squirrel hunting, but deer hunting, hunting the white-tailed deer was the thing for me and my family. I was raised that way, trained that way at an early age to deer hunt all the time. And but anyway, we was hunting the cut-down. We used to drive dogs sometime, run the deer with the dogs, or either we would man drive. And my daddy and all of them got out there and was man driving this cut-down, and they had it was a cut-down, fairly fresh, but it grown up with briars. The only way you could see over it, you'd have to find your stump out there where the trees have been taken down. So Daddy found a stump, and I got up on the stump, and he left me there, and we put different people spread out far enough where you wouldn't shoot one another. And I got out there on that stump, and it was kind of boring, wasn't nothing going on, and I took my yo-yo with me. So I reached in my pocket, took that yo-yo out, man, and the yo-yo I had then, you couldn't really see it in the daytime as much, man. I thought I was in high cotton. I had a yo-yo that had a battery, had a light in it. When you would make that yo-yo go down and come up, the light would come on. You can make it sit on. I mean, we got good at it. You can make it sit on the ground and walk the dog, they call it, and with that yo-yo. I mean, it was just do all kind of tricks in the air. But I was sitting there playing with that yo-yo, and my dad jumped the deer, and I didn't know until it was too late. But the deer ran right by the stump I was standing on, and they went to hollering and yelling and carrying on. I grabbed my yo-yo and put it up and looked. All I could see was the white tail going across the field. I didn't let the deer get away, and that didn't go over too well either. My daddy, he believed if he got out to run you a deer, we ate what we cooked, killed. We cooked it and ate it, and we didn't necessarily do that to survive when I was coming up, but we loved deer meat, and we when we killed it, we put it in the freezer, and my mom would cook it. But anyway, I let that deer get away. That was just a little story about that. Got chewed out. I didn't get a whipping for that, but I got chewed out. I'd rather have a whipping than what I got. But those are just some of the things that I wanted to share with you. Like I said, we're not living in the time we lived in back then. You can leave your windows up at night, listen to the crickets chirping, and listen to the whippoorwill. Listen to the train. Used to have a train that come right through Dovesville, and the caboose, the guy on the caboose would throw candy out to all of us. We'd run out there and get the candy off the caboose. He would just throw handfuls of candy out, and man, that was just a highlight of our day. But at night, you could lay there and hear that old whistle, hear that old train coming across the trestle, coming from across Bright Creek, coming from Darlington, headed towards the side of the hill, headed north, or vice versa. And man, that's just, you cannot put a price tag on that time in my life when I could lay there with the window open, not worried about anybody breaking in on you and doing you harm. Leave the windows up, listen to the crickets, listen to the frogs, listen to the whippoorwill, listen to that train whistle blowing, and you go to sleep listening to that kind of stuff. That's why I like the Waltons so much. That's the kind of time I grew up in. I love the Waltons, and I know physically I'll never be able to go back to that time, but in my mind, it's still there. And that's why I wanted to share this Come Sit a Spell, so we could go back in time some, reminisce, maybe bring some good memories to your memory. And I hope you'll leave the comments in the comment section below, because there's so much more I want to talk about my childhood. And I hope you'll share some things about your childhood, maybe some of the things that I've talked about. You've experienced some of the games I talked about. You've played them before. You've had some of the same experiences. I know I was foolish driving that fast, and I probably had to do it. Like I said, anything over again, I wouldn't do that to put myself and others in danger. But the young didn't know any better, and that's what you thought was supposed to be done. That's what we're doing. So don't hold it against me. I still drive. My wife I still drive too fast. I get a speeding ticket every now and then. But she says we go to the mountains on vacation. I'm like a horse headed to the barn. When it's time to go to the mountains, I'm ready to go. On beach, I'm ready to go. When it's time to come home, I'm ready to come home. And no place like home. But we'll talk more. I thank you for tuning in to this Come Sit a Spell time with us today. Again, like I said, for those of you that don't know, I'm Pastor Lon Al, the homesteading pastor here in Hartsville, South Carolina, on Harmony Acres Homestead. I just used to like sitting on the porch and The old folks say, hey man, come by and sit a spell, have a cup of coffee, and let's chew the fat, which means let's talk a little bit and have a conversation one with another. And that's what they done. And unfortunately, we don't do things like that anymore like we used to, but we can do it on here. If y'all want to be a part of that, and come sit a spell with me. And I appreciate all of you being here. Appreciate all the new subscribers. Thank all of you that are watching this channel, subscribing to this channel. We're going to talk more about some prepping topics. I believe you need to be prepping. We've been prepping here on the homestead for a while. I would encourage you to do that as well. But like I said, if you haven't subscribed to our channel. We'd be glad to have you. Ring that bell. Be notified of future videos. Hit the thumbs up if you like it. Put some in the comments, topics you may want to talk about, or some upbringing of yours, and the way it was when you were living back in the day. So I love and appreciate all of you. I pray for you daily. I don't know you by name, every one of you, but I pray for my YouTube family. God knows every one of you, and I'm so thankful for this channel. And it's going to be mostly about Christ, but I want to do some talk times like this. Lord willing, it'll be every Come Sit a Spell episodes will be every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. So try to tune in and watch those when you can. And until next time, remember, Jesus Christ loves you, and Jesus Christ is the answer for any and everything you're dealing with in life. Y'all have a wonderful rest of this evening and a wonderful night. God bless you all.